Hello, BookTube. Recently, for the month of May, Matthew at Mayberry Book Club and I have been engaged in making his channel title into a reality. We've made a little book club of two. Last month. We read Brideshead Revisited, and it was great fun. It was great fun. He was encountering it for the first time. I was rereading it for the millionth time, but with a first timer in mind, and that enhanced the reading experience. And we decided to keep it going. So in the month of May, we are reading a totally different kind of work. We are reading all four issues of Frank Miller's pivotal, just seminal Elseworld series from the 1980s, Batman Dark Knight Returns. This is a series that envisions a future in which an older Batman, an early 50s Batman, uh, stiffer, stockier, comes out of retirement in a Gotham City that looks like a hellscape out of Dante in order to clean up crime, and also, more importantly, because he's driven from within. This bat-like demon creature that I guess has inhabited him all along in Frank Miller's telling won't let him rest, and finally drives him back out to prey upon Gotham's criminals. And he, in the first two issues that we've already read, he kicks up quite a fuss, gets all the news commentators talking, gets all the citizens of Gotham talking, gets the rest of the world talking, including the White House, while he deals first with the menace of his old supervillain Two-Face, and then with the menace of the mutant gang, a gang of well-armed thugs who are very populous and have taken over Gotham City in all but name. In issue number 2 that we just saw last week, Batman teams up with retiring Police Commissioner Gordon to take down the mutant leader in one-to-one combat, thereby prompting the mutant gang to switch their allegiance to Batman, wearing the bat symbol on their faces and terrorizing Gotham's criminal underclass in unbelievably brutal ways. It's not that they're beating up criminals and then leaving them for the police. They're cutting the hands off thieves, they're burning drug dealers, that sort of thing. Things that, no matter what you think about Law and Order, unless you're Frank Miller, you won't agree with. Things that you won't agree with. A vigilante mob like that, you won't agree with them taking the law into their own hands, no matter how bad things have got. And that attitude is reflected in the Gotham City Police Department, which, when it loses Jim Gordon, gains a new commissioner of police who is much younger and who is determined that Batman is as much a threat to Gotham City as any other freakish vigilante, and issues an arrest warrant that Batman is to be brought into custody. He's not allowed to continue his one-man war against crime, especially now that it's not just a one-man war. He is the leader of the mutant gang. In other words, Gotham has suddenly become a hotbed of controversy and talk. And in the second issue, Batman defeats the mutant leader and becomes the leader of the mutant gang, and you wonder where things are going to go from there. I mean, Two-Face escaped because a plastic surgeon restored the half of his face that had been disfigured by acid, and a facile, sort of arrogant psychologist had sworn that he was rehabilitated. Then the mutant menace is dealt with. They at least aren't preying on innocent civilians anymore, and Batman is in at least some nominal kind of control over them. But in the background, while those two major plot lines have been happening in the previous two issues, Miller has been working on other plot lines. The one that I've already mentioned is that suddenly Batman does not have an ally in the police department. He needs to deal with that as well as with the criminals that he's hunting. But there are a couple of others. One involves that psychiatrist who somehow, despite the fact that his last patient went on a killing spree in which lots of people died, somehow he convinces Arkham Asylum, where all the Batman supervillains go, to release the Joker for a guest appearance on the David Endocrine show, assuring everybody that it will be okay. The Joker is rehabilitated. That's one plot line. And the other plot line, as I mentioned, connected to the White House, is that the White House has heard about the ruckus of Batman returning from retirement, and they want to make sure that it's tamped down. Because it's not like the old days anymore. Can't have colorful vigilantes taking the law into their own hands. And what does the White House do? to deal with that problem, they send in Superman. Because in Frank Miller's fervid, crackpot view of comic books, Superman is the ultimate fascist lickspittle. He has no loyalty to his old friends or to his old colleagues in fighting crime. He just wants the freedom to operate against who? I don't know. Against doing what? I don't know. This is not a world that has any at-large supervillains. Two-Face escapes, and that's newsworthy. This is not a world where we hear anything about Brainiac or Lex Luthor or the Mirror Master or anything like that. So what Superman is actually doing is left partially to conjecture. It's not hard to imagine what Frank Miller thinks Superman has been doing this whole time. He's been conducting covert wars off the books for the United States government against their enemies. In other words, it is a pretty much top-to-bottom profanation of the whole idea of Superman, and where it was only hinted at in the second issue of this miniseries, it's on full display in the third issue, where the focus shifts to the Joker. Batman is pretty sure that the Joker is gaining access to high-powered ordnance, that he is co-opting factions of the former mutant gang, that he is planning something for his moment in the sun, for his return, for his guest stint on the David Endocrine show. And Batman is trying to investigate what those things might be in conjunction with Robin, his newest Robin, a preteen girl that he has enlisted into his crusade, and that he refers to in this issue famously in a line repeated by fans for the last 30 years as a good soldier. Good soldier. He's her mentor. They are leaping across the rooftops of Gotham together. It's actually another fantastic visual here by Frank Miller. Just incredible. Just amazing. And no angle, notice. Many times before, Frank Miller has paused the frantic crowding of his pages to give us a gigantic breath of, just an intake of air. And he does it here too, but often when he does that, he's tilting the background one way or another. Here, he's enhancing the iconic nature of Batman and Robin, whoever the Robin is, by just presenting to it flat on. And it's a lovely job. Lynn Varley does the colors here, and that is just lovely. The way that works in the background is just wonderful. But when you're talking about Batman confronting the Joker, or trying to, building to a confrontation with the Joker, and when you are talking about Batman building to a confrontation with Superman, there's a thing you have to worry about. There's a thing you might not have to worry about it, but you have to take it into consideration when you're talking about now. It wasn't that much of an issue in the first issue of this miniseries. It wasn't even so much of an issue in the second issue of this miniseries. But now it comes full for, right to the front of the story. And that obstacle that you need to keep in mind deals with Frank Miller. And I'm not talking here about his political views or his artistic ability. I'm talking about something that's been fairly well known about him since he was in his mid to late 30s, which is that he's a few peas short of a casserole. And it shows when he starts to be given his head. By the time this third issue was done, the first two issues had already wowed the editors at DC, including the group editor for this project, who had a lot of experience writing Batman. They already knew that they were seeing something that was going to be immortal, something that was going to outlive their own work, for good or ill. And in this third issue, Frank Miller just is given his free lead. He's given the freedom to do. The guidelines come off of the story, and as a result, the story falls to pieces. Just falls to pieces. No matter how loyal you are to this miniseries, no matter how much you love the graphic novel that was made out of it, and I do love it, there's no avoiding the fact that this third issue stops making sense. We could hit a pragmatic objection to the events of this issue pretty much anywhere we shoot. For instance, the government, we are told, does not want the ruckus that is kicked up by superheroes. They don't want that anymore. The public has largely been disabused of the idea. The public has largely been either taught or instructed to consider these beings as urban myths, as legends. the talking news heads on the news channels in Gotham, when they start to notice signs of something phenomena happening in and around Gotham City that point to an object that is faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive, they shush each other up. One of them says, we don't want any trouble with the FCC. The clear implication being that you're not allowed to talk about superheroes anymore. That's how low-key they are. And that's how low-key the government wants them to be. So the government's response to the reappearance of Batman would not be to send in a superhero, much less Superman. It would be to send in, undercover agents, 500 of them, with body armor, night vision, and tactical gear. This Batman could not defeat such a force, and would certainly be in captivity in an hour. Instead, well, that's one of the problems here. Another problem here is that there's no possibility whatsoever, unless you just throw probability out the window, that anyone in Gotham City, at Arkham Asylum, the police department, the mayor, anyone at all, would allow the Joker to do a guest appearance on the David Endocrine show. Only in this continuity, a month at the most, maybe a month and a few weeks after Two-Face went on a crime spree. Vouched for by the same psychiatrist. There is no way that would happen. None whatsoever. Instead, the Joker is allowed onto the David Endocrine show and says to the audience, I'm going to kill everyone in this room. And they all titter with nervous laughter. There's no security anywhere in the place, and the closest that we come to anything that might want to anticipate trouble on the Joker's part is the new police commissioner and a squadron of heavily armed police officers on the roof of the building. Because the thing they're waiting for is for Batman to show up. They're not inside the building. They don't have the Joker in handcuffs. They don't have guns trained on him the whole time. They're not worried about him. They're worried about Batman showing up. Batman who, prior to this miniseries, had never killed anyone. Unlike the Joker, who's killed lots and lots and lots of people. Makes no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever, unless you tap into the fact that not all of Frank Miller's dogs are barking. Then you see that what you're dealing with is a paranoid crackpot who naturally thinks that the police, who are jackbooted thugs, will be after the vigilante who's standing up for good. They certainly won't be paying any attention to the psychotic, the known psychotic who's now out on the loose in the David Endocrine studio. So they're up on the roof, waiting for Batman. That's another total implausibility that happens in this issue. Another total implausibility is that Batman confronts them head on. He shows up in the Bat helicopter, vaults down onto the roof, and just engages in a gigantic slug match with 50 armed police officers, who are not the bad guys. They are not the bad guys. If Batman has a cloaking technology for his helicopter, then he could certainly find a way to sneak into the David Endocrine show undetected by the police outside and be there to save all those people in the studio from the Joker. Instead, he doesn't even seem to think to do that. He is going to plow his way through the police to do that. Even after he knows they're there, he doesn't abort his plan. So he ends up fighting the police up on the roof, almost going down in defeat, if not for, once again, his Robin intervening to save his hide. He's slugging it out with them, breaking the face masks of wage-earning police officers in the Gotham PD, while the Joker is inside the building killing people. The Joker escapes, and then comes up with a plan to poison the cotton candy at the Gotham State Fair, which is still being held despite the fact that the Joker is on the loose and has a long history of poisoning things. It's still being held, and it still has crowds of cheering people. This is a miserable, depressed city. Why there's a Gotham State Fair at all, we're never told. Why anybody would go to it, we're never told. Why anybody would go to it if the Joker is on the loose? Yeah, it just happens anyway. So that Batman can narrowly escape the Gotham Police Department, only to make his way to the fairground, saying Frank Miller lines the whole time. I've always known, Joker, there's nothing wrong with you I can't fix with my hands. Yeah, great. It's a great occasion for a Frank Miller line. Sure, but the Joker is killing people the whole time that Batman is trying, blunderingly trying, to stop him at the state fair. One person after another, with Batman the whole time saying that every single person the Joker kills is on him because he hasn't done something about it before. And in the Manichean view of this miniseries, the doing something is to kill the Joker. It's not to use Batman's state-of-the-art technology, which no one else in Gotham has, to make an escape-proof prison. It's not that. No. Ship him off to Arkham Asylum that was built in the 1840s. You know, it has crumbling stones where known firearms dealers and bomb makers can just waltz in on visiting day to talk to the Joker, unrestrained, in a common room. Instead of doing any of that, the Batman in this storyline assumes, well, if I'm finally going to stop the Joker from killing people, I'm going to have to kill him. And in the climax of this issue, the Batman and the Joker are down in the tunnels of an amusement park ride, hacking and slashing away with each other. The Joker shoots Batman at point blank range on the rib. We're told the bullet nicked a rib and took some flesh with it. Okay, but you would go into shock. You wouldn't just report that and keep going. And that's not the only thing. Once the Joker is disarmed somehow, I have no idea how, I have no idea why he doesn't have another clip for his gun, why he can't shoot Batman in the face at point-blank range. Instead, when the Joker doesn't have a gun anymore, he has a knife. And he is repeatedly stabbing Batman in the chest, in the thoracic region, in the stomach, in the kidneys. And we know that it's not body padding. Somehow or other, the armor that Batman had to protect him from a high-caliber rifle in the first issue of this series is gone. Instead, he's just wearing a garment. And we know that the knife is finding him because there's blood everywhere. Why those wounds don't kill him? I have no idea. I have no idea why that is. It's just because Frank Miller doesn't want him to die until he succeeds in his ultimate goal. And it's confusing even there. He has the Joker at his mercy. He has his hands on the Joker's throat. But at the last minute, it seems to be the Joker who snaps his own neck, who kills himself. And that's how the famous image here, that's how the issue ends, with a badly wounded Batman in the tunnel of love. Let's leave that aside for the minute. With the dead body of the Joker. And he is losing blood. He's badly wounded. And police are coming. So a totally botched contention with the Joker this whole time. We've seen Batman contend with the Joker many, many times over the course of literally 60 years before this thing came out. Never this amateurishly. Never. Not once, but twice. Failing to stop the Joker from killing hordes of people. That is a major plot line. You have the defeat of Two-Face in the first issue, the defeat of the mutant leader in the second issue, the defeat of the Joker in the third issue. But the third issue leaves no doubt whatsoever what is coming in the fourth issue. And it's not a bad guy. It's not a bad guy. It's a good guy. It's Superman. We get an image when they finally do meet to talk. It's not Superman, it's Clark Kent. And he is standing there, oblivious to Bruce Wayne. They're not old friends. Clark Kent is just a showboating glamour puss. Bruce Wayne remarks that it's a beautiful day, and he ruins everything by talking. And tells him, these aren't the old days, Bruce. World's got no room for, it's like this, Bruce. Sooner or later, somebody's going to order me to bring you in. Somebody with authority. And needless to say, that's not Superman. That is not Superman at all. That is a government lackey. They're in the middle of this conversation when news breaks that there has been a Soviet incursion in the island of Corto Maltese and that Superman is needed. The Reagan-esque figure, who is the President of the United States, says, and let those cute little Corto Maltese people, they just want us there. Just you ask them. Meanwhile, don't you fret. We've got God on our side. Or the next best thing, anyway. And the next best thing is Superman conducting American military affairs. There he is killing some Soviet pilots. And when in the voiceover of this, where we're seeing him in black silhouette, the blue boxes give us his voice. And here's where he gives us a sketch of where the world stands that we haven't had until now, the broader picture world. We know Gotham. But he tells us that parents' groups and the government started to be up in arms, started to raise pressure against superheroes. And that as a result, they hung things up. Hal went to the stars, we're told. That's Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. Diana went back to her people, we're told. That's Wonder Woman. I guess they aren't all that committed. They just they just pack it up and leave. And the exception, Superman says that he himself has remained hidden so that he's allowed to do good. Who could stop him from doing good? I don't know, but he's allowed to operate and do good, provided he is not a headliner. But Batman is the problem. He is lecturing here. His thoughts are directed at Batman. He's not saying any of this to Batman, but he says, they can kill us, Bruce. Every year they grow smaller. Every year they hate us more. We must not remind them that giants walk the earth. And there is Superman upending a tank while a soldier buys it in the background. Why any of this is necessary, I have no idea. I'm sure I'm not the only traditional Superman fan who read these first panels and thought, well, okay, why wouldn't you disarm all of these opponents in one fraction of a second? You could collect and empty and collect all of these tanks in one fraction of a second. You're Superman. Instead, he seems to be just sort of, a superpowered guy. Missiles and whatnot knock him around. He can't prevent soldiers from being killed directly on his watch. That is not the Superman. It's a depowered Superman, is what I'm trying to say. And he gets to the most famous line that he uses, the ones that sent Batman fanboys into hymns of ecstasy. He says, "You were the one they used against us, Bruce, the one who played it rough. When the noise started from the parents' groups and the subcommittee called us in for questioning, you were the one who laughed, that scary laugh of yours. Sure, we're criminals, you said. We've always been criminals. We have to be criminals." News to me. News to a lot of DC fans. And Superman just keeps going. We almost threw a party when you retired. But then the then the PBI was in it and things were out of hand. Then there was trouble with Oliver. You remember why you retired, Bruce. Oliver here, fans can assume, is Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. We're not told what the trouble is, but we'll see it soon enough. You remember why you retired, Bruce? No, just look at you. You'd do it again, and like a murderer, you'd cover it up again. Nothing matters to you except your holy war. They were considering their options, and you were probably still laughing when we came to terms. I gave them my obedience and my invisibility. They gave me a license and let us live. No, I don't like it, but I get to save lives, and the media stays quiet. But now the storm is growing again, and they'll hunt us down again because of you. Keep in mind, Superman is saying all this while he is killing lots of people. He's killing lots of people on aircraft carriers and whatnot. And that is this issue. If you think that I've just described a mess, you're entirely right. We have Superman who is a fascist lapdog. He is a sellout to the government, a tool of the government and its covert wars. And we have a crazy Batman. A Batman who's an amateur and also a maniac. Every bit as dangerous as the Joker, even though he doesn't technically kill anybody in this issue, unless some of the policemen that he clubs in the face die of their injuries. But one way or another, this is Batman Dark Knight Returns off the rails. And this issue is what made me really hope 40 years ago, that readers of this would remember that it's not continuity. That it was an Elseworlds story, which was an imprint that DC gave for sort of what-if stories that aren't real, so to speak. They aren't part of accepted continuity. Not that a future story ever would be, but I was really hoping when people read this that they would remember this is Frank Miller's crackpot fever dream of the future of Batman and the future of Superman. As we're going to see next week when we talk about the final volume, that wasn't true. I hoped that people would notice that this was just one version of a possible future, but I was wrong, dead wrong. Future stories, when they take on this iconic an aspect, tend to dictate present stories. They tend to shape continuity instead of just being a flight of fancy on it. And we're going to see that in the upcoming issue. We finish up Batman Dark Knight Returns next weekend with the concluding issue, and as the first issue was Batman versus Two-Face, and the second issue was Batman versus the Mutant Leader, and the third issue was Batman versus the Joker, there is no doubt, this issue leaves you with no doubt, that the fourth issue will be Batman versus Superman. Which gives you an idea of what this Frank Miller thinks is the hierarchy of evil. here. This story, it is easy to imagine a version of Batman Dark Knight Returns that is shaped differently and culminates in the defeat of the Joker. But that's not the culmination we're going to get here. So next week, prepare yourself for a good deal of ranting. I'm going to get it all out of my system, and I'm never going to talk about this miniseries again. But in the meantime, that is Dark Knight Returns Part 3. We'll be back next weekend. I'm hoping that any of you who are reading along are enjoying encountering this. A lot of you mentioned to me in emails that you've had it sitting around since the 1980s and haven't reread it in decades. So I'm curious to know how those rereadings are going. But anyway, we'll be back for the conclusion and some summarizing thoughts next week. So thank you, Book 2.